Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Dave, Go Gamers. Today we got this Nintendo Switch that a customer took to another repair shop, and I can hear it rattling and shaking. It's all messed up, but it is now not charging any longer. So let's go over to the upper cam and see what we got going on. All right, so as stated, we have a Nintendo Switch. Charging port is completely battered. And what's so crazy is they took this to another repair shop and you can hear it rattling. So I don't know if they just didn't screw things in right. Come on, guys. Like, jeez, I just don't get how. I mean, if you don't know how to do the repair, at least screw back in the stuff. Come on. We can see right here that this, I mean, obviously this Type C port is completely mangled and messed up. I'm just hoping they didn't tear up anything on the inside of the console. Also, I want to show you guys my new handy tool. I got a new thermal camera. If you guys don't know what I was using before, I was actually using a FLIR thermal camera, which was actually pretty cool. I got this Unity Pro UTI 60B. Reason why you want to use thermal cameras is because it helps you spot shorts. It can help you see heat things, so you can see how well this thing is. I'm looking around the room. We can see the TV. We can see the heat spots. I mean, this thing is pretty good. So excited to definitely be able to put this thing into some use. It's just the FLIR cameras with working with those FLIR cameras, man. I just hate constantly having to pull out my phone and hook it up to there, and it was just too much of a pain. So I just didn't even want to deal with it any longer. But let's get this Switch taken off because I'm interested to see what the inside looks like, to see what type of damage they did, and to see if we can be able to get this charging port issue repaired. So let's get that done. Wow, look at this. I mean, this is a complete safety hazard. I mean, they put this, wow. So they took it to another repair shop, gave it back to the customer, said it was unrepairable. They couldn't figure out what was going on. I can look right here with my eyes and obviously see that the charging port is messed up. And instead of replacing the charging port, they put a new aftermarket Nintendo Switch battery in here. I seriously don't get it. They didn't put any adhesive on this. I don't know if this peels off. I never mess with this third party. I don't think this is even adhesive right here. I mean, there's no adhesive. That was just completely just laying down in there. So that is a problem, and that's obviously a safety hazard when you got a battery in there being moved around and being jiggled right there. That could cause a lot of issues. So let's continuously break this down to the motherboard. At least we know what was shaking. I'm just glad it definitely wasn't the motherboard, because definitely we will probably be looking at a lot more damage than where we're at right now. So let's finish getting this down to the motherboard. All right, so we have the console down to the motherboard. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is wrap this motherboard. We're going to wrap it around the Type C charger port over here. We're going to put this Kapton tape over here. What this is a heat reflectant. If you need some of this stuff, link is down in the description. Everything that I use is actually down in the description below. Definitely get some of this Kapton tape. This is perfect heat reflectant, especially if you are working on something where you have other small components around that general area. You want to make sure everything around that area is completely protected, because you don't want to end up knocking off a bunch of these components around here and end up having to do more work than what you should be doing. As you can see, I'm already out of this Kapton tape, but here's the thing about it. Here's another roll right here. I mean, I run through this stuff like water because it's you could never be too safe, especially with working on electronics. I mean, if you do knock off a component, obviously you can try to look for the component or replace it, but you don't want to put too much time into these electronics where you end up not being able to make it to the next console, especially if you're like me who has a back order of like 300 to 400 consoles to work on. So we're gonna pull out our Omnivice PCB holder. Now, coming from a person who's used a lot of PCBs, who's been doing repairs for 15 plus years, for a very long time, and a lot of the stuff that I originally was working on was PCBs, this is by far the best PCB board holder I've ever used. Now, obviously, it's a little bit costly. It's like $70, $80. Link to this is down below in the description. This is a Hakko Omnivice. This thing is heavy. I mean, I don't know how much it weighs. Actually, I got my scale in the other room. I should actually weigh this one day. This thing is heavy. It is small, but it's heavy. So we could be able to put our PCB board in here and at any angle. So we have cushions in here, and we could be able to just straight up just tighten it up just a little bit, and we could be able to do any type of work on this type C cable. So you can see you have it right here, and this thing is literally not moving at all. So if I pull, you see I got to pull with a lot of power, but I would never put that much power to it because you'll rip this thing out the traces. But that right there shows you that this thing is pretty heavy duty. So I'm going to find a good spot for this PCB board holder to be. Then we're going to go over to the microscope and get this this type C charging port taken off. All right, so we're going to do it like this, and we're going to flip it over as well. So we're going to flip a couple times. So I'm going to leave it like that for now. I'm going to move over to my microscope, and we're going to go from there. Got my fume extractor on, got my Hakko solder iron turned on. 8341 no clean flux. Some of my favorite flux next to Amtech flux, which we actually got a huge order of Amtech flux coming in. So definitely can't wait for that stuff to come in. Ended up striking a deal with the manufacturer to be able to distribute Amtech flux on our website. So definitely excited to be able to get some of that flux in. But this 8341 no clean flux is good stuff as well. And if you want to get that flux, you can get it from the description. So I got my solder iron heating up right now, and we're going to come back once it's fully heated up. All right, so what I'm doing now is I'm using some of this low melt solder, same solder I use in every video, and I'm applying it to just the sides first because we want to lower the melting temperature. We're also going to apply it to the header. Now, obviously, there is two headers. There's also a header within here that is not visible, but it's not a big deal. We don't need too much heat to be able to lift that. Now I'm going to flip the board to the other side. All right, so we're applying low melt to the other side now. Now that we got that on there, you can really go either way. You could go above, you could go below. Doesn't really matter when it comes to heating this up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my Tular heat wand to 440. I'm going to put my airflow at 40%. And after putting it on 40%, we're going to heat up the solder pads, and we're going to remove this from this old Type-C charging port from the motherboard. All right, here we go. So we're going to come in straight like this. All right, there we go. Didn't want to put too much force on it, because you put too much force, then you can rip the traces, which is no good. What I'm doing is I'm just taking a quick peek at these EMI filters. There's a set of EMI filters before it leads to this little PCI USB chip right here. So I just wanted to make sure that all these EMI filters was still in place, which they are. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go on ahead and now remove the solder that's currently in place. So I'm going to make sure I get this low melt solder back on here to make sure we can desolder this. And also for some of the people at home, I want to make sure I add in do this at your own risk. I've had a couple people upset at me that they destroyed their consoles while watching my videos. My response to that is know your limits. I know my limits. I am not going to go watch a video on how to change a car engine and go out to go change my car's engine because I know my limits. So just make sure you know your limits. If you've never ever worked on electronic before, I wouldn't recommend doing this by yourself. So as you can see, I have my solder iron right here. We're just removing all the solder and we're getting that hole in place. That solder braid strip is gone. So I'm just going around now and we're cleaning up all that solder. Some of it I might have to come from the other side as well, but we'll see what we can get done. And what I'm doing now is I'm using my solder iron and heat gun to make sure I get up everything. Not like using this technique on the Nintendo Switches because it seems to work out really, really well when you're taking out these. Now I know you can use the solder remover thing, so you put the little pin on it and it can remove it really quick. I don't have one of those, so this is what I use. You can see we got all the holes up. I mean, let's see. We have a little bit right there. And after that, we'll have to say we're good. I can see through them already, but I want to make sure the job is as good as possible from this side before we move on to the other side. I went on ahead, I just applied a little bit of 8341 no clean flux to both headers right here. As you can see, there's two headers. This bottom row right here will be hidden, and this top row will be obviously the visible header. We want to clean all of that solder up, so make sure I go over everything and hit every single space. All right, so look at that. That looks great. So let's quickly take my Q-tip, clean up this area, get a lot of this debris, and we're going to come in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my angled tip. So I'm going to turn off this hackle solder iron. I'm going to take my angled tip, and we're going to go in and apply solder across both of the headers. So we're going to use that low melt solder that I always use. So let's get that done. All right, so let's apply more 8341 no clean flux. Had some people ask me if I run through flux a lot. Yes, I do run through this flux quite often, just because I mean you can never use too much of it. I mean, flux is your friend. So I'm going to go across this header very slowly to try to avoid hitting the anchor points. And we're going to go completely across this header and, well, both sets of header and get all new solder placed on them. All right, so I got all the new flux placed. I got my new Type C charger ready to go. These Type-C chargers you can find off of Amazon as well. Just type in Nintendo Switch Type-C charger, and we're just going to place it just straight on there, just like that. That easy. And now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this to the other side, and we're going to flow all the pins down onto the header. So let's get that done. All right, so I'm going to turn the heat wand, the Toolar heat wand, to 380. And we're going to go in. I'm going to kind of leave my tweezers right here, just hovering right above the Type-C port. And then once I see the solder starts to flow, I'm just going to gently press down on the port like so, to allow the solder to be able to flow directly on all the pins. So let's get started. A lot of those pins actually look really good. So I'm going to apply a little bit more flux on there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go in from this way now, and we're going to heat up the port from this angle, just to make sure we hit every single pin. See all those pins look flowed, look good. I'm going to release. I'm going to leave this held down on here for about 30 seconds. And I'm not pressing it down tight. I'm just pressing it down just to allow the solder to fully flow onto those pins and make sure they cool down all the way on those pins. And now I'm going to turn off my Toolar heat wand. And also, for anyone that may be curious on how you're able to apply heat without destroying the actual port inside, I don't use a lot of heat. As you could tell, when I flowed the old port off, I used 440, so I went higher. But when placing the port in there, you could do 380, and you can see how good that looks. So let's look under this thing to see what the underside looks like. And we can see in here, the reason why I like to look under is because you can see, if you applied enough heat, you can see we have on that pin, that pin, that pin, that pin, that edge pin over there, that pin up there, we have a bunch of solder that flowed all the way down onto those pins. So what I'm going to do, just to make 100% sure before we place solder on the actual legs, we're going to flow for about maybe another 45 seconds, allow it to heat up, flow down there for a little bit longer, and we should be good. Also, what I'm going to do too is, and I'm going to show you guys on the upper cam so it could be a lot more clear, I'm going to place some flux in here so that flux can reach, hopefully reach through there and get all those pins flowing, because I'm pretty confident that all those pins more than likely are flowed and soldered down, but I just want to make 100% sure. Better to be safe than sorry. So now I'm just going to show you guys my technique on this upper cam as well. So I'm going to turn my heat wand back to 380. I'm going to allow it to heat up. We're at 40% right now. And 40% on the Toolar heat wand, it would just be just on 4. So yeah, that's the same technique on the upper cam. We're going to look inside the port. I know it's harder to see on the upper cam, but we can see even on the upper cam, that port inside looks good. We can see all the plastic around it looks fine. So Let's go back over to the microscope and look at that. Look how good that looks. I mean, almost all pins are fully covered in solder besides two, which you can obviously see the solder. They're almost fully covered. I mean, that looks good. That's what I try to aim for. And that lets me know that every single pin is soldered down. We can see this port looks good. There's no melting on this port because we don't want to give this customer back with a port that's even partially melted. All right, so now for the legs, let's apply 8341 no clean flux on all of the legs. And I'm going to use my flat tip as well to get solder on all the pins. All right, so we're using our solder iron to flow the solder directly on all the legs. You can see how I'm doing it. That looks good over there. That looks good. All right, so that looks good. Look at how I got all the legs, even the small little holes down there. Everything looks good. So now let's look at this port from up top. All right, so let's pop some flux right here. And we're also gonna pop some on that other leg as well. Now I'm just gonna flow a little bit of solder onto the tip of my solder iron. We're just gonna go in and allow that flux just to prop up just like that. So you see how good we got that to come up. Look at that. I mean, those are two good secure legs. And we don't need to go too crazy on these back legs because it's super secure from underneath. But we're just gonna go in, do the same technique, tend our solder iron. We're just gonna pop a little bit of solder down here just to make sure we can get it to flow up. All right, so you can see that side is good now. Now we can see the solder. And this also ensures that these customers are going to have a good port that's going to last a long time as long as they take care of it. All right, so that looks good over there as well. I'm just going to move that around just a little bit more. So that looks perfectly fine. So we have a good, nice, secure board, and we can even double verify that header right there. We can see all the pins are solid. Everything is down on the header. Everything looks good. So let's switch over to the upper cam. Now what I'm going to do is first off, turn off the fume extractor. I'm going to remove this Kapton tape, and we're going to make sure that none of the components fell off. Unfortunately, even with Kapton tape, sometimes still with these really, really small PCB boards, you'll still have it where components may or may not fall off. So here we are. As you can see, I have a donor board. I don't know what has been taken off this board, but I just want to line them up, and we can see right here we have our caps up here. And I'm just going to bring this board up here so we can see it a little bit more clear. So as you can see right here, everything aligns with how this board looks. Obviously, we're still going to need to do a deep cleaning on this board, but that's coming up here in a little bit. Let's flip it over. We see all of our EMI filters, all these caps are intact. Everything else over here looks good. So now the next step And the reason why I took off the gloves is because I didn't want to use those gloves, because those gloves got all types of flux on them, and I like to swap them out. And plus, these gloves, I pretty much got a bunch of these clear gloves. Usually I would use the black gloves that you guys will see in the other videos, but I got like 1,000 of these gloves for free. I mean, you can't turn down free. You cannot turn down free when it comes to gloves. So, especially since I got them for free, I have no issues with moving through them the way I do. So we're going to go through, scrub lightly with this toothbrush, and we're going to clean up this entire area over here. All right, look at that area. That looks beautiful. We got a nice secure, and let me tighten up just a little bit. We got a nice secure Type-C charger port. We got a nice clean area. That was my toothbrush and 99% IPA. Don't be cheap. Don't go to Walgreens, Walmart, Rite Aid, and go get 70% rubbing alcohol. See, I've seen people do that. I've had people ask, "Oh, can I just go get rubbing alcohol?" No, it's not going to work nowhere near as good. If you want this board properly clean and you want this board to look good, you're going to need to go spend a little bit of extra money. It's good, clean job. Everything looks great. I mean, just that Type-C charger looks great in there. So this is how you want it to end off. You don't see any burn marks, no melting in that port, because we use a good amount of heat. And you want to make sure you use the right and proper equipment to make sure you can get this flowed on there correctly. But yeah, this port isn't going anywhere, so we are good. So let's get this thing put back together and we're going to test. All right, guys, so I let this Nintendo Switch sit overnight on the charger. So it is obviously now the next day, and it is fully charged. Charger obviously works. Everything is good. As you can see, we have the battery symbol. I'm turning it on right now. First time turning it on, and there we go. So touchscreen works. Joy-Cons work. Everything works fine. So looks like we had obviously just a simple Nintendo Switch charging port repair. I'll try to upload more Nintendo Switch repair videos because I really don't have much on the channel. I kind of did a lot of the Nintendo Switch repairs off camera, but anytime if I come across another like M92 chip issue or P13 chip issue, I'll be sure to upload those videos so you guys can have more of a variety of repairs on Nintendo Switch and a lot of different diagnostic techniques that I use when coming to diagnostics. I know there's a USB Type-C that you could plug in to these things, and you could be able to test it and ground it out and see what component may be failing as well. I don't use that, to be honest. I just open up the thing and I just do it just the old school way, because you'll spend more time sitting there testing the reader, the points, and looking at the measurements for everything. You'll spend actually more time doing that than what it would just do just to open it up and to diagnose it the old school way. So I'll show you guys that next time I come across one of those repairs. But besides that, I hope to see you guys on the flip side. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video. See ya.